I'll be the first to say that I do not rely on experts for facts. I may listen to what they have to say, but if there is an odd or easily contested message that is being stated, then I will always ask for a source for all this information that is being discussed. You can imagine how this goes down when talking to friends and family. It's not good most of the time because people don't like to hear the truth. But as I've said before in previous videos, the science doesn't give a shit about your feelings, your traditions, or even your taste preferences. And if that bothers you, too fucking bad. We live in this world of he said, she said, bro science. So I'm always very skeptical when anyone says anything in relation to nutrition science that isn't consistent with what has been shown to be unhealthy or healthy. This is one of the main reasons why I started my Professor series, because people end up idolizing other people and everything they say rather than just properly interpreting the available science. As you can tell, I am a big believer in science-based constructive criticism, and I always welcome it. These moments of critiquing give different opportunities of opposing different points of views that may have never been identified if not discussed by other multiple parties. Proper critiquing broadens the horizons of those who are willing to put their pride and ego aside. With all that said, there has been a little bit of controversy brewing up with Dr. Greger and him cherry-picking science. This has been brought to my attention a few times already, first by Jeff Nelson over at Veg Source, who I greatly appreciate, and now by Joe over at Red Pill Vegan, who recently published a video on a few Twitter commentators, some of those Twitter commentators actually being doctors and researchers themselves, calling Dr. Greger out on some not so accurate claims he's made in some of his videos. I'm not gonna get into the details of what these Twitter commentators were saying, but I'll put a link to Red Pill Vegan's channel and video up above so you can check it out on your own if you haven't seen it already. Now, Red Pill Vegan had a little call to action at the end of his video in regards to where Dr. Greger has misrepresented or cherry-picked the research, and I actually have an instance where I found one actually it was like a year ago or something like that. I just never really said anything about it, but nonetheless, here we are bringing this topic up. The video was published back in January 18, 2017, titled "The Effects of Animal Protein on Stress, Hormones, Testosterone, and Pregnancy." Dr. Greger, in his typical fashion, narrates some of the harmful effects of eating animal-based proteins compared to other sources of food. It appears that high animal protein diets have a lowering effect on testosterone compared to high carbohydrate diets, without regard if the diets be a high junky carbohydrate type of diet or a whole food plant-based or just a plant-based carbohydrate diet. I'll also say that there's always going to be debate on whether animal protein is necessary for human consumption, but I'm not going to get into the weeds of that. I'll just refer you to one of my previous videos I've made on this where I link all sorts of science on this topic and I take a very neutral position on this topic. Link is up above. Check it out if you so desire. Nonetheless, it looks like cortisol, which is the body's natural stress hormone, is raised after the consumption of animal proteins, which then happens to have some type of association with lowering testosterone levels, specifically in men. Dr. Greger shows this with this study and then jumps to another study showing how eating animal proteins can lower testosterone in South African men sick with prostatic cancer. And I don't necessarily have any qualms with him showing those studies, but then he makes this just incomparable leap to natural bodybuilders and how they will have lower testosterone levels leading up to their competition day and on competition day because they have such a high animal protein diet. This is where Dr. Greger completely steps out of bounds. So just listen first and I'll explain after.
High protein diets suppress testosterone. That's why if you take men eating plant-based diets, have them start eating meat every day, their testosterone levels go down, and actually some estrogens go up. That's why bodybuilders can get such low testosterone levels. It's not the steroids they're taking. If you look at natural bodybuilders who don't use steroids, 75% drop in testosterone levels in the months leading up to a competition. Right? Testosterone levels cut by more than half, enough to drop a guy into an abnormally low range. It's ironic that they're eating protein to look manly on the outside, but it makes them less and less manly on the inside.
So Dr. Greger is making the claim that a high animal protein diet is what causes natural bodybuilders to have low testosterone levels leading up to the competition day and even on the competition day itself. This right here is completely wrong. For starters, Dr. Greger is using this one study to prove a point that is not true based on the statement he said in the video. This study had a sample size of just one bodybuilder, and this one bodybuilder did have a drop in testosterone during his preparation for the bodybuilding show, and on his competition day, his testosterone levels were lower, but it was not because he had a diet that was high in animal proteins. It was because he was in a state of starvation. The guy went from a total body fat percentage of 14.8% to 4.5%. That's insane. Has anyone ever been at that low of a body fat percentage before? Anyone? Because I have. And I felt like absolute dog shit. My sex drive was almost completely diminished. I felt weak. My numbers were going down in the gym. I felt tired, and I was just pretty much borderline miserable. I had lost all motivation to do any type of activity, but I would force myself to still do it anyways because I was slowly starving myself to death. And I may not have been as lean or even training as hard as this natural bodybuilder. I was just a dude training. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, well, this is just some anecdotal experience that I had and blah, 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 and that's not science. And you're actually, I agree, you're absolutely right. But I bring this up because it's actually consistent with the science. As shown here in a review titled Evidence-Based Recommendations for Natural Bodybuilding, Contest Preparation, Nutrition, and Supplementation, it directly states here, during starvation, a reduction in testosterone occurs in normal weight but not obese males. And an initial drop in testosterone occurred in the first 6 weeks of preparation in a group of drug-free bodybuilders, despite various macronutrient percentages. In other words, it's not so much the amount of animal protein or any macronutrient split the bodybuilder was consuming that caused this huge dip in serum testosterone levels, but the sheer amount of weight loss, in other words, the caloric deficit that he was doing over that 6 months, and the amount of possible overtraining the bodybuilder was doing to his body, which caused this massive drop in testosterone levels. So if this bodybuilder, let's just say, decided to go whole food plant-based during his contest preparation for a bodybuilding show, I would be willing to guarantee, I'd put money on it, that regardless whether it be an animal-based protein diet or a whole food plant-based diet, it wouldn't matter. If the guy's in this deficit for this long and he's cutting from pretty much 15% body fat, or pretty close to 15% body fat, all the way down to below 5% body fat, I would guarantee no matter what diet you are on, your testosterone levels, your cortisol levels are gonna shoot up, your testosterone levels are gonna drop, you're gonna feel like absolute shit, not because of necessarily your diet, but because you are malnourished from lack of calories. You are starving to death. Also, in case if anyone was wondering, the bodybuilder's testosterone levels went from 9.22 nanograms per milliliter or 922 nanograms per deciliter, so upwards towards the higher range of natural testosterone levels, and they dropped all the way down to 2.27 nanograms per milliliter or 227 nanograms per deciliter, which is out of range for a man of his age. So he dropped all the way pretty much below normal range for a man of his age in regards to his testosterone levels. So it's very clear that Dr. Greger misrepresented this study, as a higher animal protein diet was not the cause of this man's T levels to drop so drastically out of range, but rather it was the fact that this bodybuilder was slowly starving himself over a 6-month period for a bodybuilding show that actually was the cause of his testosterone levels plummeting to the ground. So why does this happen? I don't know. Maybe it's the body's natural way of communicating to itself that it is in no way ready to procreate because it is not in a currently healthy state, and it will possibly die if it continues to live in this current state of caloric restriction and stress. Anyone who is active in the bodybuilding community can attest to this fact. That is, getting to extremely low body fat percentages will always lower your T levels and have multiple adverse effects on the body, such as losing strength, having trouble sleeping, and other adverse hormonal issues. Evidently, Dr. Greger misinterpreted or misrepresented, I don't know, this finding and showed it to the world in the form of this YouTube video, but does that discredit this whole body of work that Dr. Greger has put out? Of course not. The guy has released insane amounts of science-based information that is absolutely correct and consistent with the science in regards to nutrition, and this hopefully just seems like it was a slip up because he probably doesn't understand the sport of bodybuilding and the effects it can have on the body. Oh, part of me just wants to say, of course, Dr. Greger doesn't understand this. I mean, look at the guy. I've seen thicker spaghetti noodles than Dr. Greger's arms, but that's not the issue that we're dealing with here. This hopefully just looks like it was a mistake and nothing much more than that. So I just want to end this video by saying that I greatly appreciate Dr. Greger and his research team for everything they have accomplished and all the information they've gotten out there. I think him, Dr. Greger, and his research team have done much more positive things than they have negative things for these science-based and plant-based communities than any other person that I can think of. So I don't think we should have to roast the guy or his researching team because they make a few mistakes here and there. If anything, proper critiquing and bringing up these issues the way we're doing so is a proper response to handling these misfires of scientific interpretation to help further progress this community and society as a whole. So that's about it for now. Please let me know what you think in the comment sections down below. I've linked all the studies and videos and all that good stuff in the description box down below if any of you want to do any further research or any further digging. Please know that I greatly appreciate every single one of you. Feel free to rate, subscribe, and hit the ding dong button if you haven't already. I'm the Natural Hulkster. I want to thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for the next one.